All right, guys, we're going to go through this test review real fast, or not. But the first part of this is in number 1, we're asked which equation best represents the line graph below. So we're given this graph and we have to come up with the equation. So this is like writing equations. Feel free to take out those notes, right? And remembering that when we're given a graph, we need to choose 2 points. So I'm going to choose this point here. And this seems like a pretty clean point here. And this point is 0, -5, and 7, -1. So I'm going to find the slope. All right. I make my table. I write my points. And I am going to find my change in y and divide it by my change in x. So the change in y from -5 to -1 is +4. And then the change in x is 7. So my slope is 4/7. All right. So now that we have our slope, we're going to label this x1, y1. And remember, we're going to put it in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, right? And so let's do the plug-in. So y minus -5 equals 4/7 times x minus 0. All right, the double negatives gives us plus positive, so that's y plus 5. When we distribute the 4/7, we're left with 4/7x here. Subtract 5 from each side, and we have y is equal to 4/7x minus 5. Remembering that we do want this in standard form, recall that standard form is ax plus by equals c, where the x term and the y term are both on the left side of the equal sign. Right now, only the y is on the left side, so we need to take this 4/7x and put it over here with the y. We can only do that by doing the inverse operation, which is minus 4/7x from each side. All right, so now we have -4/7x plus y equals -5. 2 things we don't like with standard form is a negative and then fraction. So we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and multiply each term by, first off, we're just going to switch them by -1, right? Switch the signs, and then we're going to multiply by 7. So I'm going to make my load light and just multiply each term by -7. Okay, so when we multiply each term by -7, the negatives, of course, will cancel here, right? So it becomes positive, and then the 7s cancel, and we're left with 4x here. And then y times -7 is -7y, and -5 times -7 is +35, which is G. Number 2, we already did this in class, where it says, according to Ohm's law, the electric current I in amps in a circuit varies directly as the voltage V. When 14 volts are applied, the current is 2 amps. What is the current when 29 volts are applied? Now, when we see this varies directly, we know we're talking about direct variation, right? And I may not have made this as clear yesterday, but we always say that Y varies directly with X. So what comes before the varies directly is the Y, and what comes after is the X. Notice here it says the electric current I in amps in a circuit varies directly as the voltage V. So that means our voltage here is the X, right? The voltage is the X. And what becomes before varies directly is I in amps. So that is going to be our Y. All right, so when we read this next sentence that says, when 14 volts are applied, the current is 2 amps. We're going to use that tidbit of information to find our K. So K is equal to, remember Y, which we said is our in amps, right? Over X, which is volts. So that would be 2 amps over 14 volts. That's how we find our K. Put this in your calculator, turn it into a fraction, and we should find that our K is 1/7. Leaving us with an equation, Y equals 1/7x. Now that we know that, we can use this information to answer the question, what is the current when 29 volts are applied? Remember, volts is X, so that's what we're going to substitute here. We're going to put right here for X, 29. So 1/7 times 29 equals, and yep, it should give us about 4.14 amps, which is our answer. All right. Now, number 3, it says the distance d that a spring is stretched by a hanging object varies directly as the weight of the object. If a 6 kilogram object stretches a spring 29 centimeters, how far will a 25 kilogram weight stretch the spring? Now be careful here. Remember, we said Y varies directly as X. So what comes before this is our Y. So that means the distance, Y. And then varies directly as the weight, W. So W is our X. So to find our K, we take our Y, which is our distance, and divide it by our X, which is the weight. We're given this tidbit of information here. It says if a 6 kilogram object stretches a spring 29 centimeters. So 29 is dealing with our distance, and the 6 kilograms is dealing with our weight. All right, so we divide that, and in our calculator, we're going to get something like 4.8333 repeating. All right, but that's our K, right? That's our K. What we want, though, is how far a 25 kilogram weight stretches the spring, right? So we're going to use this 4.8333. X is dealing with weight, so we're going to insert 25 kilograms there. And 25 kilograms times 4.8333 gives us approximately 120.83 for an answer. All right. The next one says the height in centimeters H of X of a human female of European ancestry can be established by multiplying the length of the tibia in centimeters X by 2.90 and then adding 61.53 to the product. Which of the following best represents this relationship? First off, notice that we're multiplying that length X by 2.9. And the way that we represent X, multiplying X by 2.9, is simply 2.90X. So we're really writing what we're reading. And then add. Addition just means plus sign. 61.53. So that means H of X is equal to 2.90X plus 61.53. And that is H. That is H. All right, when we look at 5, it says, what is the equation of the line that passes through the points -4, 1 and 4, -6? Well, we have 2 points here, right? And we're looking for an equation. And we've talked about how to write an equation given 2 points. So let's do it, right? First, we got to find the slope, right? And the way we do that is by making our XY chart. So that's -4, 1 and 4, -6. Now we got to find our change in Y. and divide it by our change in x. The change in y goes from 1 to -6. And if we plug that in the calculator, basically -6 minus 1, we're going to get -7. All right. And then when we go from -4 to 4, we have added 8. So our slope is -7 divided by 8. All right. And now that we know our slope, we can actually eliminate some answers here, right? So for instance, H and J don't have a slope of -7/8. So that's not going to work. But what we can do now is use this point, like for instance, -4, 1, let that be our x1, y1. And we're going to plug that into our point slope form. All right, let the point slope form on this test be your best friend. All right, so y minus 1 equals -7/8 times x minus -4. That double negative becomes plus positive, right? And then we're going to do a little bit of work here. We got to distribute the -7/8 inside, so this becomes -7/8x. And then -7/8 times 4 becomes -7/2, or -3.5. Right? We're solving for y because notice how our answers have y solved for. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add 1 to each side so that y is by itself. Now we have y is equal to -7/8x minus 2.5. With this as the answer, what do you think the answer should be here? You got it. It's going to be F. All right, with number 6, it says luxury limousine charges a fee of $50 per hour to rent a limousine plus 50 cents per mile driven. Which equation can be used to determine C, the total cost to rent a limousine for 3 hours, if M represents the number of miles the limousine is driven? Well, first off, look at how it says it charges a fee of $50 per hour, right? And it told us at the bottom that it's going to rent for 3 hours. So we know off the bat, if you're going to rent for 3 hours and it's $50 an hour, you're going to be paying $150 at least. But then you have to add on the cost per mile. Remember that per mile, like each, every, right? Tag on the X or M, whichever one you choose, right? And so there we have it. The answer is D. All right, the answer is D. The answer is D. Now, with number 7, it says Shantae bought a package of 36 tickets for carnival rides. Each ride requires 4 tickets per person. All right, that per person, right? We know X is not far behind that 4 per person. So that we already know that's going to be a 4X, right? Now, the question is, which linear function, if any, represents the relationship between X, the number of carnival rides Shantae went on, and Y, the number of tickets remaining? Now, we have 36, right? But for every person, you're losing tickets. You're not gaining tickets. So there's a subtraction here of -4 for every person. Now, which equation looks like that? It's H. All right, 8. It says an architect is designing an office building with N floors. That's important, right? That will have an FM radio antenna of 15.85 meters tall on its roof. Each floor, that's important, right? All right, I meant to highlight that. Each floor of the building will be 3.9 meters high. Which function can be used to find the total height? Now I need the actual pencil. All right. Again, which function can be used to find the total height of the building in meters, including the FM antenna? Well, we know the FM antenna is the 15.85, right? So we can go ahead and write that. Plus, every floor is 3.9 meters high. We don't know how many floors, but we represent it by N. Therefore, we're going to say 3.9 N, representing is 3.9 meters for each floor. Okay? Now, this is written a certain way, and you may look for the answer and think, is it A? Right? But notice the N is attached to this 15.85, and that shouldn't be. So what we have to remember is that 3.9 N plus 15.85 is where we need to be, which is B.